It is a little bit calmer here in Lugansk than it was yesterday, for example, or the night or the early hours of the morning. But again, calmer is a very relative term here. There's no telling when the violence will start back up again. It could be in 10 minutes, it could be in an hour, and there's no telling how long it would go on for. The artillery shelling, the gunfire closer to the front lines. Over the course of the night, there were multiple shells that impacted on the outskirts of the city, and they were very loud explosions, especially about around 3 a.m. We've also seen footage of the remains of a vehicle allegedly hit by a guided missile, which killed 2 civilians while they were traveling along the road. This is according to local authorities. There was also a depot here in Lugansk that was hit. We heard that explosion. This is not a long way away from us, but this was an incredibly loud explosion that shattered glass and caused all sorts of damage at the depot. Given that it was in the early hours of the morning, there are no reports of civilian casualties. A civilian house was also hit. It burned entirely. Its owners had evacuated, again, according to locals, just a day before to Russia as part of this general evacuation that we've seen in the Donbass region. Aside from that, there's also, of course, optimism that soon this could be ended. People here are tired after 8 years of on and off violence, shelling and war. They're psychologically exhausted, mentally exhausted, physically tired, and all they want is for this war to finally end. They believe Russia's recognition of the 2 breakaway republics here, Lugansk and Donetsk, could be the beginning of that end.
Выстрадали, дождались и положительно.
Очень рады, что нас признали. Долго этого ждали, и слава Богу, дождались. Спасибо России.
Это новая страница нашей истории, так сказать. Огромное спасибо, Владимир Владимирович. Мы очень долго этого ждали, 8 лет эти были очень томительные. Мы очень много чего пережили.
Все люди счастливы, просто счастливы. Мы не можем даже сдержать эмоции.
Есть уверенность, что нас не бросили и есть будущее.
Но я рада. И самое главное, что я рада, потому что люди наши не будут погибать. Люди.
Это очень долгожданное событие. Я думаю, вчера весь Донецк прильнул к экранам и ждал. Встретили его со слезами на глазах. Ну, мы очень счастливы.
Нормально, хоть порядок будет, перестанут бомбить, хоть люди заживут.
Очень долго ждали. Ощущение того, что, наконец-то, свершилось.
Of course, any optimism is being tempered by reality here, and reality here is such that there's no telling when and how this will end. Certainly, there are no indications that there's going to be an end to this violence anytime soon. We've seen the collapse of negotiations, the Minsk agreements, and perhaps some fear here the only solution will be a military one.
The blast occurred here in Donetsk at around 1 a.m. It happened at a guarded TV station and not far away from where we are right now. The blast when it took place, there were employees there at the TV station. The station is called the First Republican channel. Around a dozen or so employees were at work at that point. Fortunately, no one was hurt in the blast, and apparently it was an explosive device. Now, we went to the scene where it happened and spoke to some of the employees, and this is what they told us about their experience.
After the explosion, we came to have a look and saw broken glass. I didn't see evidence of it containing anything additional, so it was likely just an explosive.
After having a look around, we felt it's most likely that someone threw the explosive over the fence. It's not a shell. Maybe it's an intimidation act. As we understand, the war is not only at the front line, it's also in the information space.
I think it is a threat to journalists to say there will be further terror attacks against them.
Now, shelling here in Donetsk hasn't been as frequent since the sun came up. However, over the last few days, there was quite a lot of artillery duels along the front lines. And on Tuesday, we received reports that multiple rocket launchers had been used by the Ukrainian military. Now, around 4 o'clock this morning, the village of Spartak on the outskirts of the city was shelled as well. As the result, several houses were caught on fire, and apparently mortar fire was used by the Ukrainian military. Also, ceasefire violations had been recorded by the OSCE monitoring mission here in Donetsk and across the front line. However, Ukrainian authorities are denying any ceasefire violations and also denying allegations by the republics that their army is preparing for an offensive against the Lugansk and Donetsk republics. Meanwhile, the Red Cross are also working here in Donbass, and they've been here since the very beginning of the conflict in 2014. Now, their mission is, their task is to deliver food, heating coal, drinking water, technical water to all the residents that live closer to the front lines. And we went on one of their missions on Tuesday when they were delivering water tanks to the village of Yelenivka that was shelled multiple times, and as the result, their water supply had been cut off, and around 20,000 residents in the village and around that area have no access to drinking water or technical water whatsoever. Now, we spoke to the head of the International Committee of the Red Cross mission here in Donetsk, and this is his view on the current situation.
The International Committee of the Red Cross is very concerned about the developments we have witnessed in the Donbass over the past few days. In times of conflict and violence, it is essential that all sides ensure the continuous supply of a sufficient quantity of drinking water, as well as other essential basic supplies to meet the daily needs of the civilian population on both sides of the line of contact. Unfortunately, the recent intensification of the fighting has again put certain key essential services at risk of coming to a full stop. The ICRC would like to stress that without urgent action to protect essential services in areas where the hostilities take place, we might face humanitarian implications at a large scale.
Now, the last recorded shelling here in Donetsk took place around 4 a.m., like I mentioned, and it has been relatively quiet since then. We haven't heard any artillery fire here in the center like what we've gotten used to over the last few days. And of course, local residents are hoping that peace will remain, are hoping that the shelling will stop and they can finally return to their normal lives.